Okay, so we're zero. That was a zero. All right, let me go in and check everything, make sure it's okay. Give people a couple of minutes.
You're like a professional at this.
I just, I don't know. Honestly, I think it's kind of natural.
Yep.
It's just one of the things that came very natural. This is our 659th episode of this show.
Marvelous.
Yeah, yeah. You know, one day I looked up and it was 400, and I was like, "How did we get to 400 so fast?" But I realized there were days I was doing 4 and 5 a day. There was a period, I think, about 6 weeks. We probably did 100, 120 maybe in 6 weeks. Okay, let's see here. Let's see what we got. It's not up yet. We'll be on just a second. Let's see. Facebook, it seems to me, has been having some tech issues.
Yeah,
recently.
I think so. My messenger was down before.
Yeah, I think what it is they're constantly upgrading, and the upgrading. Here we go. There we go. Okay, we're just getting in. They're just getting us in the door now. So we got 2 people in the house, but we'll have some more coming in. Make sure the sound is on. Yep, it's on. Rosie Neal's in the house. Hello, Rosie. How you doing? Thank you for the birthday greetings to see ya. Thank you too. Let's see here. All right, now I'm going to share this into the group and into the network, and then we're going to formally roll the show out here. A very special guest today. Let's see here. Yeah, all the way from near Liverpool, England.
Yep.
I can tell by the Beatles accent that you have. Dion Duplay, what's going on? Okay, let me get back over here on this one.
All you need is love.
That's right. Somebody sent me the today is your birthday.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard that one in a long time. Somebody sent me that today. That was cool. All right, let's see. Let's find Dr. Joe here. Oh, no wonder I can't find it. I got a page full of birthday greetings. Let's see here. Oh, here we go. Okay, so we're all right. Let me welcome everybody. How you doing? It's good to see everybody. We got 8 people in the house. If these shows resonate with you, please share. And let me just say this. I think this is going to be a very special show. We had one that I felt very similar a couple, 2-3 days ago with Jason Estes. And the funny thing about it was that only about 400 people came in the door, and there's about 2,500 people have watched it now. There's been over 200 shares. There's been over 220 engagements. And so a lot of the traction that we're getting through the synchronicity and alignment that we're having at Soulspeaks Network, it's because it's organic and raw. It's coming on the replays. But I would encourage each and every one of you to please share so that we can get the word out and expand the awareness of so many souls like our guest today who deserve and have earned a wider awareness. We're going to have some fun today because we're dealing with a very colorful character. I'm going to give you a little backdrop on it. Today this is SOULSPEAKS 5D. Today our guest is Dr. Joseph Delaney, who's a PhD and an SCCI and a FIBMS and a FFHT and a PHYSOC, and he's got a little bit of a smart aleck in him too. Not smart aleck, but kind of funny. He's funny. He's very funny. But he does a lot of different stuff. But I'm going to just read this first part. He's a consultant, principal lecturer in integrative medicine with Rural Metropolitan College and an associate lecturer in evolutionary psychology in integrative health practice with Liverpool and Edge Hill Universities. He also worked as a senior research fellow in medicine at Wirral University, teaching hospital, exploring the use of non-medical interventions alongside pharmacological methods for treating hypertension in patients, diabetes, and chronic kidney disease. He's got a lot of pedigree. He's earned his stripes. He's got a lot of stripes on his coat. But without further ado, let me just welcome Dr. Joe Delaney. Thank you for honoring us with your presence today and sharing space with us.
Thanks very much, Todd. It's a pleasure to be here, and happy birthday, mate. You've had a hard life by the looks of it.
Well, by some people's standards. I think it's been colorful and enjoyable. You, I don't know. Let's start with what you were doing today. You have a lot of stuff that's, in your bio, and actually, because I know a little bit, because I researched it a little bit, an interesting path. You've taken a very unconventional approach to the field that you started out in, and we talked a little bit about that. But what were you doing today in Liverpool? You were at a lecture. You were speaking. What were you speaking about?
Yeah. There was an event today. It was called Sacred Soul Sunday, and it was basically people with the same mind and heart sets as ourselves. And I was invited to give a talk on my particular area of supposed expertise is really collaboration between the left and the right brain, and East and Western philosophies, really. And what I've tried to do is I've tried to bring in a neuroscientific approach to the study of mindfulness, mindful breathing, positive emotion, and intuition guided cognition. So it's really allowing the heart to guide the head to make healthier, wiser choices, and therefore improve people's quality of lives. Because as you know, I mean, most of us are head dominated, and we have heads full of knowledge that's no use whatsoever, really. So I'm sort of, because of my own personal experience, which I'll expand upon later, I came to see that cramming your head full of knowledge was just basically obstructing you from the intelligence that needed to guide the path through life. And I help people now in something called quantum disentanglement. I'll make words up myself, or these words are given to me because I like to play around with words. But just to say, I'm a consultant in integrative medicine, but I'm not a doctor of medicine. I'm a doctor in medicine. And all that means is I've got a PhD in medicine. And my area of interest is what goes on between the ears, how it affects the rest of the body, particularly at the level of the heart. And what I've found out over time is that the way we think is really directed by our level of soul's development, if you like. And that soul's sorry?
The way, what'd you say? Is the way we think.
Yeah.
Is direct.
Yeah, is directly related to our soul's development. And really, it goes soul, heart, brain, and out then, rather than the other way around. Because I think that the way, generally speaking, Western education works is we read, we take on board information that basically crams our head up with nonsense and stops the true expression of our essence. And I've developed an approach called the I am approach, because as most of us know on this channel, I am is the eternal essence, the energy that binds us all. And I think more and more people are waking up to the fact now that there's something much deeper going on. And people are waking up to the fact that maybe there's a different way to actually consciously go through life and make better choices and help more people and stuff like that.
I like what you said with the approach is heart, brain, then out. And then I'm thinking of your description of the Western educational process, which is really just info to the brain and out, right? Totally excluding the heart, unless you're in the arts or something like that, or in a special situation and parents encourage creativity or something like that. But that's interesting. And now you mentioned your own personal experience, and I know you touched on that when we talked.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, were you already in the academia? Were you already in the medical side of things before you went through your personal experience? And if you're okay with it, would you want to walk us through what happened and how you evolved to this place?
Yeah, sure. I'll just say that quite some time back, I tried to take my own life, and I made a very serious attempt to do it. It wasn't the first attempt, but it was after years and years of stress and anxiety and depression and panic attacks and stuff like that. And it never started off like that. I started off at 17 years of age, enthusiastic. I was going to meet the right girl. We were going to have 2 children together. I was going to make a name for myself and buy a big house and have 2 cars and all that sort of stuff, because that was the sort of motivation driving me at the time. And I joined the local pathology department, sort of clinical sciences place in a hospital, and I just loved every minute of it. I'd always had a passion for seeing how connections work, and I was really interested in how the body worked and how all the organs were connected. And so it was definitely the right area for me. But what happened was, as I became more enthusiastic and learnt more, they promoted me quicker. And as they promoted me quicker, they put me into more and more administrative roles. And it took me away from really the bench research that I really loved. And as the years went on, in order to keep up with the, increasing pace of promotion, right, I found that if I drank enough, it made me calmer, and I was able to carry on. And as the years went on, as the stress increased, the alcohol increased, and then I found that smoking, when I was tired, smoking used to stimulate me then. So, the normal story that people are used to. And then I would take all sorts of prescribed and non-prescribed medications just to try and calm down. And that went on for years. So it never started off in a negative way. It started off in a very positive way. But as the years went on, my vitality decreased. And at the end of all that process, I lost my job. I lost my wife and kids. I ended up homeless. And, in a right mess, really. And people used to say to me early on, Joe, if you carry on like this, you're going to lose your job. I knew that, Todd, but I couldn't stop it, And this is the whole thing about addictive behavior is driven by negative emotion, and negative emotion is far more powerful than what the head can drum up to try and stop it, so willpower is of no use whatsoever. In fact, the people around me tried all these fear-driven behaviors to try and get me to snap out of it. But because the problem was in my emotion, the fear used to, it used to build up and actually send me back to the bottle much more quickly. So that's the story, really. And for years, I would have prescribed medications which really didn't do anything for me. I went to cognitive behavioral therapy, which gave me more sophisticated methods of coping, which didn't work. And at the end, I was hurting myself so much and hurting the people around me so much that I just thought the best thing for me to do is just end it all, really. And it was in the process of trying to do myself in that some sort of light bulb moment happened to me. It's almost like I sort of had a vision that I was at the gates of hell or heaven. And it was almost like something spoke to me and said, and this is the strange bit, it said to me, son, if you can't take a joke, you shouldn't have signed up for it, And when you're in this desperate situation, that's a very peculiar thought to have, And really, I've looked back at it now, and I can't remember fully what happened.
I think that was you talking to you, actually.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that it was. But what actually happened is a feeling descended upon me, and I can only describe it as the peace that passeth all understanding. And in that moment, for however long it was, it seemed like an eternity. I understood everything about what life was about, what the cosmos was about, and all that, So if we call that, one of those epiphany moments and whatever. And it was from that point I almost got the feeling that I was turned back round again, kicked up the bottom to say, son, you signed up for this. You wanted to be a teacher. Go back and start learning, and just show people how really the path is all about the heart and the intelligence of the heart, and it's not about what the head says. So to me, Todd, and I know I'm going on a bit, but I do go on.
No, it's beautiful, man. Don't worry about it.
It's
great.
Education to me, educere, I mean, you can tell I'm a teacher, but from the Latin, it means to draw out of. And I think it's sort of, if you like, my mission and my job is to help people to let go of what's not working for them, and to find the gifts that are innate in them, that they're natural in them, you know. And I do believe that every person is responsible for themselves. I think that's really important. Each soul must turn their eyes inwards and look deep into their heart and soul, and really find out what their personal specific mission or purpose is, if you like, you know. And once a person is aligned with that, their soul's mission, then they're aligned with the source of vitality that never runs out, you know, and will guide them to express this and create something beautiful with it, you know. And I never used to be a sort of romantic type person like this. I was very left-headed and very rigid and very linear. But I see now that the situation we're going through globally now, people are waking up all the time now. You know, there's many spontaneous kundalini experiences going on. And I think my job is to try and explain to people how to keep their feet on the ground, but how to open their head to all this universal information and wisdom that's pouring in.
Wow, that was mic drop. that was Soulology what you just spit out there. You know, my question too is, you were left brain, and how long ago, once you got to that point when your higher self stepped in with its incredible sense of humor, but how long ago was it when you went from left brain to warm, fuzzy, and funny, and how did you get there? I mean, were you already in academia, but what did you do once you got out of the situation that you were in?
Well, I spent 8 weeks in the psychiatric department, and it was in there really that things started to tumble into place. I met an occupational therapist and a nurse who'd recently been on a motivational interviewing course, actually, but it was a humanistic psychology course. And they started to ask me questions about me that made me realize that up to that point, and I was 38 years of age, this is 26 years ago, you know, I was up to that point, I'd been living everybody else's life, you know. I'd been living a life which was not actually suited to my own vibration, if you like, and my personal resonance, you know. And I didn't have an opportunity. Had I not gone through this, I think I'd probably either be dead now or just on some really, really miserable treadmill, just trying to carry on, you know. So what it made me realize is that most of the thoughts, most of the ideas, most of the emotions and attitudes that had been given to me were just a recording from everybody else's life, you know. And so basically, over time, I've been able to wipe the slate clean, you know. And every morning, Todd, I wake up, and I must mention Alcoholics Anonymous as well. You know, I'm clean and sober and been living life in the raw now for coming up to 27 years. And what I do was AA and all these 12-step fellowships. It's a lot of misunderstanding that goes on about them, but their principal motto is "To thine own self be true." You know, and to me that means don't be true to anybody else's self. Dig deep, take your eyes and put them inwards. Dig deep and find out who you are essentially, and then start to feel your way through life. Through experience, and be honest, you know. And what I do in the morning is I wake up, you know, and before I open my eyes, you know, I open my heart and I open my head and I just tap on my heart and I just say, what's on the cards today, you know. And I feel that I'm sort of my physical body, if you like, the body that the I am is in, you know, it's a sort of a we process really. It's me and it, who are it anyway, just sort of feel our way through life. And, you know, I'm coming up to 64 years of age. I've never felt better. All my blood parameters are great. My blood pressure is great. My blood sugar is great. I've never felt more well, more free, more open. But I also know that I've only just scratched the surface of this thing, you know. I wake up every day and something new happens, you know. And my biggest problem was I was what's called a knowledgeable idiot. You know, I was full of arrogance, full of qualifications, about biochemistry and pathology and hematology and all that. I knew a lot. About myself, I didn't have a clue. And
Wow.
I'm learning every single day.
And so in you know, in this personal journey, what this started 26 years ago, 27 years ago.
Yeah.
Then you start seeing, I would imagine over the last few years, you started seeing the ascension topics start hitting, you know, the alternate news and on social media. What's your view on that, and what effect has it had on you to see what's going on?
Well, in 2011, I was sort of prompted by my heart intelligence or my spirit to find out about shifts in consciousness and yoga philosophies and Mayan philosophies. I didn't have a clue. You know yourself. You wake up and suddenly you've got this whole train of thought in. I thought, well, I better go and do something about that. So I gave a talk in 2011, which basically predicted what was coming up. And this information was given to me, and I've learned that in yoga, this was predicted because we're coming to the end of what's called Kali Yoga, which was a time of chaotic disturbance across the globe. And we're moving into what's called the Satya Yoga, which is a time of enlightenment and gold. It's sort of a golden era. The Mayans more or less said that this would be the end of times and a new time would come in. And I understand that's a new level of awakening and consciousness for humanity. The Hopi Indians had the same version of this. We're moving from Pisces to Aquarius. So all these sort of ancient traditions were basically saying the same thing, that there would be a great big surge, if you like, and change in consciousness. And what humanity needed to do was not trying to work it out with the head, is just basically let go, trust the process, because they would be guided through if they listened deeply to their heart and their soul and tried to trust that there was something more intelligent than they were, and that's what I try to tell people. And so it's on YouTube, actually, the talk. It's called Surviving the Great Shift. And in honesty, the stuff that was coming out of my mouth, you know how it is. You say a word and you think, I wonder where that came from. Well, that's how it seems to work with me. I was given this talk, and I've looked back at it now and thought, my God, it's all coming true. So
Wow.
I don't. My biggest thing is, if I'm feeling emotionally disturbed, it can't be the divine part of me, because that's all powerful. So therefore, if it's not the divine part of me, it must be the ego. And if it's the ego, I just need to stop, acknowledge the disturbance, turn to my heart intelligence, and I just say, will you please show me what needs to be done here, please? And before, I didn't know that. I was just racked with pain, racked with shame, racked with guilt. And I just used to try and drink and drug it away to anesthetize these feelings. I can see now that there's a phrase, pain is the touchstone of our recovery. And to me, what that means is every time we get a pain is not to try and fix it with some sort of medication. It's to sit deeply with it and basically to ask the body, what is it you're trying to show me? Because the wisdom of the body is miles, miles, miles ahead of what the head can tell us.
And so are you saying that when you do that, are you hearing what the remedy is, or what the root of the problem is? Are you getting it from a signal from the body, or both?
Yeah, what I do is I just sit very quietly in a sort of a mindful state that I've learned to do over time. I breathe at a specific frequency, around about 6 breaths per minute. And this is what my science work is, and I can talk about that in a second. And when I'm in that sort of coherent point, and then I just ask, is it something that I've got to do? And I'll get an indication of, yes, you need to go and apologize to that person because you were rude, or yes, you need to go and stand up for yourself because you backed off. So it's almost like it's always about overcoming fear. Because I used to duck and dive and dodge and weave. I hate confrontation. I've always been a sort of sensitive, even though I'm 6 foot tall. I was like a jelly on the inside, and I've tried all my life to be physically strong. I've done all sorts of martial arts. But when it came to confrontation, I basically put my head into the sand or wanted to run away, So to me, what's actually happening now is this great tsunami of tidal wave of love is highlighting people's basically where they've actually not taken the correct action in fearful situations. And that might be a personal thing. It might be even something that's come from their ancestry, you know. And what I think is we're all having to work our way backwards to what Buddhists call the original face. And I think once we hit the original face, the smile and that radiant light comes through, and you know, and you sort of get an idea of what it's all about. So sometimes it comes to me in pictures. I have clearly heard voices. When I went through this process in the beginning, when I got the big release, I got a big release for about 9 months, and I thought it was like the second coming, you know. I was, you know, as people were passing, I was touching them, hoping they'd be healed, you know, because I really felt, and they call this the savior complex, you know. It was called the honeymoon period. And, you know, it was one of those where, you know, I think we talked about this, where I was, you know, I was walking on grass, imagining that the flowers were blooming by my feet, you know. Anyway, I woke up one morning and it was gone. So I rang up the person who was looking after me, what they call a sponsor, and he said, "Thank God for that." He said, now you've had a touch. He said, "You've been a pain in the arse for months." He said, right. He said, "Now that you've had a touch of it," and really, for 9 months, I was in 7th heaven or 12th heaven or how many dimensions there are, you know, and I was floating on cloud 9 as well. And it did leave me. And there was sort of, my feet were gently put back onto the ground. And I worked through the process with people who've been before me. And basically, they just took me through the process and said, okay, you've had a touch of it now, day by day, one step at a time. You've got to walk through and overcome all the fears that are hidden in your shadow self and things, you know. And so that's what's happened, you know. I feel like I've been hand in hand with the spirit of the universe, and I've been guided through all these sort of childish fears that always seem like mountains when you're on that side of it. But when you've passed it and look back, you think, what was I so bothered about for all these years, really?
Yeah. Kind of like that voice that came to you when you woke up.
Well,
Yeah.
to be honest with you, when I went through this release, I got this clear voice in my head, you know, in my ears. It felt like in my ears. And it said, "Joseph, we love you." And I thought, oh my God! I thought I was back on the way to the psychiatric department, you know. And the next morning, and this is true, you know, the next morning I went downstairs. I was walking down, and there's one of those placards on the church, and it said, "We have called you by your name. You know, I have called you by your name. You are mine." I thought, oh my God, here we go again, you know.
Yeah, there's no coincidences at all.
No,
There's
no, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, I had a question that framed up, and I lost track. But you know, I want to make one comment. No wonder you said our lives were so similar. I didn't realize how deep you went, or you know how similar it was. Anyway, so over there in the area in the UK, it sounds like you came out with this vibration at least earlier than you know. 2011, 2012. It sounds like you were already on this path. And also, if you did that lecture in 2011, the one you're talking about on YouTube, and we'll talk about your work in a little bit, obviously you were ahead of the game. How was that taken over there? Because it seems to us over here anyway, it seems to me with the research I've done and what's out there, that it's pretty dense, especially around London. I know you're closer to Liverpool. Mm-hmm. Which I know is more working class and probably more progressive in that sense in terms of human independence and rebellion. My cup of tea.
Absolutely.
But so how did that all play out? Were you affected much by that at all, or do you just keep your eyes on the road?
Yeah, I just keep my eyes on the road. I've got a network of people who are in the same position, have been, you know, are traveling along the same path. We share from the heart exactly what's going on with us, you know, and we don't look for advice or guidance of anybody else, because I know that what I'm seeking is here in my heart, you know, it's in my soul. So the people that I work with, they don't give advice or guidance. The only thing they say is, you know, back to your heart, back to the wisdom of the heart, really. So what happened was I came out of there, and I wanted, my ego self wanted to go back into the hospital and get back into the lab and be a sort of sober lab person. but my spirit or my soul had different ideas, and I was guided to a local college where they were doing sports massage, sports therapy, and health and well-being and fitness training, and it just appealed to me. I thought, well, I like sport and things like that, and so I signed up for the course, and then it all started to fall into place. Then I did the course, and then I was introduced to complementary therapies, which I didn't have a clue about. And I was introduced to things like Indian head massage and Reiki healing. So over time, spirit has guided me into all this right brain stuff, And I love dancing. I've always loved dancing. That's been the thing that sort of kept me going for a while, And I do a lot of dance now, but it seems to equalize me out now. I've got one foot in my left brain, one in my right brain, and I've become a fantastic dancer over time. No, I haven't. That was just a lie. But
Well, I had the
think I'm a
same
good
path.
dancer.
I had the
Yeah,
same path, and I think the same thing about myself, but I just don't do
yeah,
it
yeah.
anymore.
I think I'm a really good mover, but my kids are just like horrified when I get onto the dance floor. But there you go. But yeah, so what happened was I became a Reiki master, and whatever that means, because my feeling is that the energy is always the same. There's been a ramp up and a different frequency of energy, and since we've moved, and I think your guest the other night, and which I found fascinating, Jason, I think it was called
Yeah,
Jason
yeah,
Esther, what he said coincides with what I feel deep down,
that's
that
yeah,
we're moved out of now. The linear model and old
yeah,
paradigm has dissolved, and basically, and my work now is basically about how the heart is the master, or the soul, the heart of hearts, I call it.
yeah,
That's where the master and the calming vibration comes from. And I sort of see this as the Christ center. If you were a Christian, this could be the Christ center with
yeah,
the 12 disciples gathered around, And I think before I understood this, the disciples, which represent different disciplines to me, different dimensions of consciousness, right? They were all squabbling with each other in the left and the right brain, And I think there's a masculine and a feminine component to these disciples as well. And I think there was such a hodgepodge and a chaos of information, and there was no clarity at all. It was incoherent. And I think what's happened is, as the heart's awakening now for humanity and everybody else, it's trying to assert itself now and get the disciples to all sit down quietly and then send them out on their particular paths when they're needed. So to me, I don't know if that makes sense, but to me,
no, no, that makes total sense.
to
In
me,
fact,
I
that
think, sorry, mate.
no, go ahead.
I think what's actually happening is, I think there's 12 aspects of consciousness that are available to everybody on the planet. And I think that the more that the heart opens, the more coherent, the more skillful, the more intelligent people become. And as I saw a clear vision once of people who are closed in their heart and in turmoil. It was like the crown of thorns, and as the heart opens, it flips upwards and becomes the crown of crowns. And
Yeah,
I've sort of linking this now to the 12 cranial nerves, because this is what I do. I do neuroscience, the 12 meridian systems of Eastern philosophy, the 12 months of the year, the 12, it's basically everything's about 12s to me now,
yeah,
you know.
yeah. This is weird
Okay.
because no, no, it's because everything you're saying it speaks to me because first the journey was very much the same. Right out of the box, all I got was 12. I was shown it in a different way. I wasn't in the field of study or profession you were, but everything was 12, and it just kept coming up 12. The other day, and I can't remember what show it was, which is another thing you're talking about that's really weird, that's speaking to me. Somebody was talking about how, and again, this is their interpretation of how they've received it, that there was an oversoul, and that oversoul was made up of 12, uh, 12 whatever, what are components, monad, it's a monad, and six were feminine and six were masculine. Then you're sitting here talking about the disciples. I'd never looked at it that way. And then you bring up the 12 meridians and the other things you're talking about in the brain, which leads me to my next question. Now, you've got so much stuff to offer, I can tell. It's obvious. I know you, I've seen some of your videos. Have you written any books? I mean, do you have, and I haven't either, but I mean, do you have Do you have your own delivery and archives, built on your own journey? Are you influenced by one or two things in particular?
The book is being formed as we speak, and the ego side of Joe wanted to publish something that was academically credible, but I think that spirits have got different idea. I can feel a popular book coming out. It's called "There's No Effing Stress If You Focus." No, honestly, this is what
I love it. No,
there's no effing stress if you focus on feelings first. And focus on feelings first is F off. FOFF, and I put this to my academic colleagues and they were horrified, and I put it to the normal people, it's good to be back with the normal people, right? And they thought it was a great idea because, the whole thing about my life now is I was focusing on thinking all the time, and now it's not about thinking. I've sort of, and I think that we should metaphorically decapitate ourselves, as I said to you the other day, kick our heads away and just start again with a clean sheet and just work from the vibration of the heart. Because in the end, that is the frequency that brings back what they call psychophysiological coherence. And I think not until we're coherent in ourselves can we pick up the whole host of information that's trying to come through us. So it's got to really be about emotional calm and clarity of thought. It's about space, really, And I don't think, all this stuff people say about holding space, anything that involves tension, in my view, is incorrect. I think this is about letting go completely and just sitting in stillness, not trying to work anything out. And, my PhD, which is a 100,000 word thesis, is basically how you can breathe in a certain way and how you can use positive emotion to get to this still point. Because to me, and I use a machine, it's from the Institute of Heart Math, and a lot of your the people watching this might know about that, but it's basically shows how by breathing in a certain way and using positive emotion, you can get your heart to actually work in a very, very rhythmical and coherent pattern, which shows that the yin and the yang of the heart, or the left and the right of the heart and stuff, is in perfect balance. At that point, a perfect balance, to me, I see a gate opening up, and then there's an influx then of all the information that we need to know, And I think things like Tai Chi, yoga, specifically Hatha yoga, these are the things that I try and put the patients onto now, because these things teach stillness, they teach mindfulness, they teach certain breathing techniques. Funnily enough, Todd, these things have been knocking around for 3,000 to 5,000 years. Modern medicine's just getting a handle on it and is only 250 years of age. So maybe we should think about looking, back to these ancient things rather than spending too much time on the new stuff,
Now, do you have a practice? Are you a practitioner, or do you primarily?
Yeah. Well, I don't, to be honest with you, I don't get much time to do one-to-one stuff now. I'm mostly being called to help people with managing stress. But to me, once again, the management of stress is to help people to become aware of how they're contributing to their stressful situations. My biggest problem was I was brought up to be a good boy, to be respectful of people and stuff like that, and it was to put everybody else before myself, And I teach selfishness now. I say to people, okay, you've helped enough people in your life now. Now it's time to help yourself. So I honestly believe that unless you know how to deeply care for yourself, you can't really help anybody else. It's more like interfering in their lives,
Yeah.
And I think what tends to happen now is when people ask me to do them a favor, I just say no. Because before, in fact, nobody ever asked me anymore because I never do anything for anybody else.
There is an F in favor.
yeah, true enough. And that's what they call me in the trade. They call me Dr. Effing Joe, because sometimes bad words come out of my mouth, but hey, what can you do? I was born by Liverpool, and that's the way everybody speaks,
I don't
there
know
was a
why
time.
I'm getting that Pink Floyd, another brick in the wall.
Oh, absolutely. There's no doubt about that. They were tuned in by a manner of means. But I think, there's certain substances that you can take and actually pierce the veil of these things, and give you insight into different dimensions of consciousness.
Yeah.
But I also know I teach raw and natural methods now of opening chakras, which are basically the precursors to the endocrine glands. I can see that very clearly now.
So you're connecting. This is what I find fascinating is you because in the beginning you were talking about the left and right,
Yeah,
the east and west, and because of your academia and your studies, your profession, you're connecting the kind of the non-physical to the physical, and you also made the statement of the I am presence and listening to the I am presence in the body, and that the I am presence, basically the soul's in the body, right? And so they're both in a sense, if I'm getting what you're saying, they could be, I guess, seen as two different quote unquote voices, but you're integrating the non-physical and the physical, and would it be safe to say that the body and the I am presence in you is becoming one voice?
absolutely. I think what happens is that you first of all understand that there's two voices, and what's been happening is the soul has been knocking on the physical body for such a long time, and that's what pain is. And then you begin to understand that the more that you relax and let go of the physical tension, the more the light body or the soul or the car or whatever you want to call it starts to sort of infiltrate the physical body through the chakras, through the meridian systems. And I think that a lot of people who are going through this awakening, this Kundalini awakening, are experiencing all sorts of peculiar physical symptoms. They go along to their ordinary doctor, no organic problem can be found, and that's because it's an energetic problem. And really, it's a recalibration and a reconfiguration of the way DNA expresses itself. I mean, sometimes people ask me, well, what exactly do you do? And I say, well, I'm a consultant in psycho, neuro, endocrino, immunology. And they say, what's that? They say, or
What is that?
yeah. And I say, well, it's the way that the mind sends signals to the nervous system, and how those signals, in direct relationship to the way that the mind works, sends information to the endocrine glands. That's your the seven major endocrine glands, and how those endocrine glands, dependent upon the electrical signals that are being sent, impact upon the secretion of these substances into the bloodstream. The secretion of these things then impact upon the way the organs work, and the way the organs work, it really sort of makes up your biochemical signature. And the biochemical signature then influences how the stem cells work. And the way that the stem cells work determine how you are created then. So in the end, what goes on between your ears impacts directly on what comes out and who you become. And I can see that as clear as anything now. But that's a step beyond for biomedical science at the moment.
That's
And
yeah. That's
I've had
that's
a lot of doors shut on me academically because they just can't get their head around it at all, really. And I can sort of clearly see, like a lot of us in this field we can see how this invisible manifests itself in the physical, and really the physical is just the end result of all sorts of things that are going on in quantum dimensions, in the universe. And that's
yeah.
where I'm up to now. I'm learning every day. And I just, I know that we're on the right path. You know, each individual soul, I call it collective individuality. So it's a sort of herd, if you like, but we're all doing our own thing, and we all fit in with a different vibration that makes part of this new harmonic. I can't think of a word now. Harmonic.
It's like the body collective, like
Yeah,
the whole
yeah,
body collective. And then that's what I kind of got this about a month ago. I saw the whole body. I had a whatever, a meditative experience, and I saw the body collective, the God goddess collective, whatever, source, whatever, and I saw my cell in it. But what I also saw was that each part of the body, obviously, what the cells that were around the cell I was were most like me, right?
yeah,
And I think part of what I understood out of that was if I was in the physical world in a part of the body collective that I wasn't in the same vibration with, then things were very, uncomfortable, imbalanced, that type of thing. The other thing I wanted to say was I want to do a follow-up book with you, because I had an experience a few weeks ago where it was basically, you can have whatever you want if you get the F out of the way, and that's another way to say it too. And then I think about what you were talking about earlier, because it is really that simple. And I can see why they wouldn't accept it in academia, because it doesn't fit in their box, but because it is that simple. And I remember when I came out of my situation, which was like your situation 26 years ago, one of the first things I heard was, you've been carrying the load like Atlas with the world on its back. And you've had all these people and all these strings tied to you, and it's depleted you, psychologically, physically, mentally, and spiritually even. And I was told, in a very humorous way, I was told, the best thing you can do for those that you love and that love you is to be at 100% health spiritually, because the energy of that alone, without words, without anything, will affect all of them, and that's what I was going to say about a follow up with you, as you were talking about it's not being accepted by academia. Do you think that the energy that you're putting out there and those that you're working with, your peers, do you think that even though they're not being accepted into mainstream, that you're still having an effect through the ethers onto the world?
I've no doubt about it, because they knew what a stress head I was. People I meet from the past now, I just can't believe the transformation that's happened. They can't believe that I don't drink anymore. I run. I mean, I've just completed my 8th half marathon of the year. I'm coming up to 64 years of age. I'm not very quick, but I get on with it, and I just feel fantastic. I feel like every day is a new opportunity to learn something else. But to go back to your point, the world's collapsing because people don't know how to handle the stress of the situation. They're basically contracting. It's called an ego contraction, and in that fearful state, you can't think creatively. Really, you're just pinned to the treadmill. And people are coming to me because they know that I do massage, they know that I do Reiki and Tai Chi and stuff like that, and they're basically asking me, what shall I do next? And I just point them, right, to give them a few techniques, point them back to the heart, because to me, it's just sitting with themselves at depth that will provide the solution for them, really. And a lot of my peers who've gone through this process are coming out the other side now and saying, that stuff you're going on about, there seems to be something in it. And that's what I like, a little spark goes on. But it's amazing the people I've met. I mean, I've become something called, there's like a fellowship that I've joined called Humanity's Team. And I've recently become what's called a certified conscious business change agent, and all that really means is it means putting presence before profit, so it's presence, people, planet, pets, and profit at the end, and I think that's what's happening in big business as well, that big businesses are collapsing because the people who work there just can't handle it anymore, Okay. So there seems to be a big upturn in everything that's going on.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Just as a point of curiosity, because of the uniqueness of your path, you've got so much time invested in into the professions that you've been in and your understanding of the human body, basically. Have you, when you're connected with the universe or through your journey with the universe, have you had the essences of angelic or galactic type of communications? And if so, if you don't have a problem talking about it, if you do, it's not a big deal. What would they have been, or what have they been?
Yeah, I do. I mean, in deep meditation, sometimes different sort of voices I get into doing chanting. I've done a lot of chanting anyway to try and open and express the heart, but this sort of comes automatically now, especially when certain rhythms come in. And I end up sort of talking in multiple languages and doing Native American Indian stuff as well, and I just let it happen now. I don't try and work. I don't dismiss anything anymore. I don't work it out, I don't put, I think if I put a label on it, right, it starts to cause problems then, because people say, right, well, no, you know,
Yeah.
and I'm okay, you know. I mean, I don't follow a religion now. In fact, I follow all of them because at the core, I think the major religions are just speaking the same language. I think it's the fighting over words and the semantics that causes all the problems, you know.
Yeah.
But I quite like I was brought up an Irish Roman Catholic, you know. That's another interesting part of the journey that I may talk about one day. But I quite like the idea of archangels and angels and different dimensions and stuff. I can handle that. So I sort of stick with that and don't. But I really try not to label it. I just go
Yeah.
with what I
I like
feel.
that. I like
You know.
that. I like that. That really, at the end of the day, that's really where we're headed.
Yeah.
Because what's interesting is you see in these light keeper circles or whatever you want to call it, ascension circles, you see people hanging on to the story, hanging on to the label. They kind of maybe open the door for them or whatever, and they're still over identifying with this particular archangel or this particular past life or this particular galactic aspect of themselves, which is really no different than hanging on to the story of a traumatic past. It'd be like you tell your story with purpose because it has it's useful to do that, but you're not stuck on it. You're not saying, oh, this is who I was and this is who I am. Because really the other thing that jumps out with what you talk about is what jumped out at me from the beginning, which was every time I hit this point of synchronicity or this point of revelation or epiphany, the past and the present and the future would just merge and come to this place. And I'm like, okay, how do I stay in this spot? How do I stay right here where everything forward or everything behind or even parallels benign? And I'm in this, I am presence. I am souls, what I call it. It's all the same thing. But yeah, I totally relate to what you're saying. Somebody said earlier that we're twin brothers.
I'm the handsome one.
Right.
I must get my eyes tested. But I've got this phrase because funny phrases come to me and I'm giving them. And I've got this. There's an absence of presence at the moment in the world, and I can see that's happening, But that model's dissolving very, very quickly. There was another time when I woke up one morning and I was in that presence sort of imagineering sort of zone, and I had the whole of how the universe is worked out in this mathematical formula. And I was sort of saying to me, oh, please, please let this stay with me so I can understand, So the ego in me is deep, They do say that the ego dies half an hour after you do, and I can sort of handle that one really, because I think while we're on Earth, the ego's there just to provide you with a prompt, just to keep your feet on the ground,
Yeah, I agree.
But can I just say a bit of a plug really, because this I've met all sorts of weird people from across the globe,
Thank you.
And one of them, no, that's okay. And because there's the Texas link, I'm working with some people now internationally, and I seem to have fallen into the next generation. So everything that I'm doing now is really about how children form in the womb, and how it's our consciousness or the mum's consciousness and the food she eats will determine whether the child's brought up in a toxic soup or in the elixir of life. And tomorrow I'm going down to the House of Commons in London to a conference which is all about how to treat our pregnant women better, because my view is that, that's where the start of it is. It's all about love. It's all about gentleness, kindness, compassion, and nutrition and so food and mood. And I've met people from, I've met an artist called Kate Lumley. I'm giving it a plug. Do you mind if I do this?
No, I'm all for it. I'm all for it.
Okay, well, Kate Lumley, she's what's called a heartist. She's a fantastic artist, but all her work is inspired from her heart, and she's an absolute genius. She's created this thing called the universe, EWE, and it's about the love yous, and these sheep, right, are individuals that are a completely different flock. So she's doing all this universal stuff. I've teamed up with a singer-songwriter called Paul Luftenegger from Canada, who consciously writes his music from the heart. So all his stuff resonates with the heartstrings, so that brings in a new heart vibration. And also somebody called Ashley Lee from San Diego, who works for the Conscious Center, the Center for Conscious Kids, it's called, in San Diego. And I seem to have been guided to work with these people and more. But the whole thing is, I don't know where I'm going with this now, really. I think
you were going to plug your new CD. Are you singing now?
Yeah, I am a good singer as well as a good dancer as well. But you know,
I'm with. Let's make an album. No, I think you were talking about you know, the importance of the womb. Would you say food and mood, and then you went into the children, you know, the kids.
Yeah.
And then I guess maybe the creative aspect. It's okay. My 3D brain doesn't work very much anymore either way.
Yeah.
But you know, the other thing I wanted to just make sure that to reiterate was what you said about the ego. You know, dying a half hour after physical death. But I'm a big believer that the higher the soul goes, the higher the awareness, the higher the ego goes. I mean, it only makes sense. I received in my own way that the ego is just the flip side of the soul. It's like the great universal equalizer here, you know, for us on a personal level. So, you know, it's interesting. Yeah, this whole conversation has been interesting, but I would love for you to plug anything you want to. And I'd love to have future collaborations with you. And I have no problem speaking my mind publicly, but you know, it's a very important time. There's a lot of alignment. So where can people find you? And any events you have or projects you have coming up, and all of the above, please put them in the links of the comments after the show, if you would, or send them to me personally and I'll do it.
Okay. Yeah, I've sort of been pushed now to sort of get myself out there, because I've really been hiding myself away for a while, but I'm being pushed now to sort of get it out there because it's the message that's important, and so I'll do that. I've got a web page, but I'll put that on a link and send it to you, and if you wouldn't mind doing that, that would be good.
Yeah, send me the web page directly, and I'll work it through the network.
Okay, mate. Lovely. Yeah.
And so did you remember why you were connecting with the singer? I'm also a conscious writer of music, which I'm not going to say I can sing or rap or anything like that, but I can write some pretty good lyrics. So I'd love to collaborate with anyone you might run across that's doing that kind of thing. But you were talking about the lady in San Diego and the guy in Canada.
Oh yeah. So it's all become about the kids, and I can see even the attitude and the mood at conception impacts upon the way DNA expresses itself, and I can see that clearly. It's an energetic process, you know, and when children are born, the way they're nurtured in the first 6 months of life is important, but really the first 7 years of life, as the Jesuit said, give me the child until he is 7 and I will give you the man. I can see that most people on the planet are blocked really in an intelligence or an intellect that was formed in the first 7 years of their life. And now that all this chaos and confusion is coming in, they go backwards to just working on those childlike sort of things that aren't working anymore. So it's really, to me, and this is the hard part, it's about emotional growth. So to go back to what I said before, my own journey was about facing fears and going through them, because every time you go through a fear, you get all the energy back that was holding it down in the first place. And this is how we become empowered. It's when you face fear, you get the energy back. There's a phrase I like is, you're only as sick as your secrets, you know. And I think, and I really believe that what's happening is this tsunami of healing energy is causing all our secrets to come to the surface. And basically all we have to do is accept them, see if there's any actions to be taken, take the action and move forward. And I don't think anybody's going to get away with anything at all, because
they're not.
It's all about learning, mate. Learning through experience, and the experience generally means focusing on feelings first.
That's what I was going to have you go back to, and then you just finished it up that way. And the other thing is, I find it fascinating too, because I hadn't really thought about this, but you were bringing up yoga at the beginning of the show, talking about what they had prophesized, and of course we know about the Hopis and so many other different ones, the sacred books, and it's almost like we all put together this common threaded story. But that certainly contained apocalypse, unveiling, ascension, as kind of a, as a hint. of what was coming, obviously, but this is a very personal thing. And they talk about heaven and hell, and it's like, we have a choice here. I remember when I started out in the beginning of my turnaround, as you described yours, and I remember getting probably the best message I ever got. As I was walking the streets thinking, oh my God, you did this, and oh my God, you did that, and oh my God, that was just last night. And this and that. And I remember hearing this voice, and it said to me, just understand that everyone is going to know everything you've ever done.
Yeah.
And at that moment, all the fear left pretty much, and I was like, oh, well, if that's the case, then, if it's just a matter of showing my ass, I am soul. So I can live with that. But it's interesting though, because it's getting more, and it's more clear, I think, to people in whether they're conscious or not, that you can't hide. And that's really that's the big joke. And I was going to say too, when those epiphanies come, they always seem to come when you go through the fear, and like you said, get your energy back. The other thing that always seems to come with it is a good joke. Because if you can't laugh at yourself, like you said, if there's tension in the body, then there's an issue. There's an issue going on with yourself.
First thing that leaves in stress is your sense of humor, isn't it, really? And it's got me in trouble all my life. People thought I was sarcastic, and irony and sarcasm are different things. Mine's never, ever meant to be offensive. But what it does is it offends people's egos. And I think that that's a gift, really,
Yeah, I do too. Absolutely. Yeah, I know what you mean. I didn't laugh for 10 years. And and once I got that message about, showing my ass, then I started to, not only did I start laughing, I laughed like I never have, and it just gets better. But much of the time I'm laughing at myself, because as you gain that awareness, and like you said, your ego wants to come in and own something, and then you get a little deeper laugh and a little deeper wisdom. It keeps you on balance. So tell me one more time what the name of your book's going to be.
It's called There's No Effing Stress If You Focus on Feelings First. Okay. Yeah. And focus on feelings first. And the focus on feelings first is F off.
Yeah, I love that acronym. I love the acronyms associated with your work, and I love the acronyms you come up with in regard to your work. I'd love to collaborate with you again, Dr. Joe. It's been a very meaningful beginning to my birthday, and I want to thank you for sharing on a personal level, sharing time with me on my birthday. So
thanks, Todd. I've enjoyed every second of it, mate, and have a great happy birthday, and speak again soon, hopefully.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much, and send me those links, and I'll get them out there. Okay,
I will do. Thanks, mate.
All right. We'll see y'all later. We'll be back in a few hours with Teresa LaPrey Rivera discussing unity consciousness.